In the grand ballrooms of British high society, where every gesture carries meaning and every accessory tells a story, one piece of jewelry would ignite a media storm that nobody saw coming. What began as a simple choice of evening would unravel decades of carefully guarded royal protocol, expose hidden family tensions, and reveal the true cost of living under the world's most watched microscope. The Spencer family diamonds had witnessed countless moments of triumph and tragedy, passed down through generations like whispered secrets. But on this particular evening, as London's elite gathered for the most anticipated charity gala of the year, these precious stones would become the center of a drama that would captivate millions and forever change how the world viewed the modern British monarchy. Sometimes the most explosive revelations come not from grand announcements or shocking confessions, but from the simple act of a woman choosing which necklace to wear. Tonight, that choice would echo through palace walls, newspaper headlines, and living rooms across the globe, proving that in the royal family, nothing is ever truly forgotten, and the past has a way of sparkling back to life when you least expect it. The afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows of Clarence's house as Camilla stood before her dressing room mirror, contemplating the evening ahead. The annual Children's Hospital Charity Gala was one of the most prestigious events on the royal calendar, and as Queen Consort, she understood that every detail of her appearance would be scrutinized by photographers, fashion critics, and royal watchers around the world. Her personal stylist, Margaret, had laid out 3 potential evening gowns across the chaise lounge. Each one was exquisite in its own right, crafted by renowned British designers who understood the delicate balance between elegance and appropriateness that royal fashion demanded. The midnight blue velvet gown caught the light beautifully, while the deep emerald silk spoke to the season's trends. But it was the classic black number, with its subtle beadwork and timeless silhouette, that kept drawing Camilla's attention. As she ran her fingers along the fabric of each dress, her mind wandered to the significance of the evening. This particular charity was close to her heart, having supported children's health care for over 3 decades. She remembered visiting the hospital just months after her marriage to Charles, seeing the brave faces of young patients who inspired her daily. Tonight's gala would raise crucial funds for new medical equipment and research programs that could save countless young lives. Margaret began arranging the jewelry options on the velvet-lined tray, each piece carefully selected to complement the evening's potential ensembles. There were several sets from the royal collection, including a stunning sapphire parure that had belonged to Queen Elizabeth II and a modern diamond suite that Camilla had received as a wedding gift. But tucked away in a separate box, almost as an afterthought, lay a piece that would change everything. The Spencer family necklace had been in the royal jewelry collection since Diana's marriage to Charles. It was a breathtaking creation, featuring a central heart-shaped diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light like captured starlight. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, each element perfectly balanced to create a piece that was both dramatic and deeply personal. Diana had worn it to several high-profile events during her marriage, and it had become one of her signature pieces, photographed countless times as she graced red carpets and state dinners. After Diana's tragic death in 1997, the necklace had been carefully preserved, eventually finding its way to Catherine, the Princess of Wales, as part of the collection passed down through the royal line. Kate had worn it on several notable occasions, always with the grace and dignity that had made her a beloved figure in the royal family. The piece seemed to suit her perfectly, complementing her classic style and honoring Diana's memory in a way that felt both respectful and natural. But tonight, Margaret had included it among the options almost by accident. She had been gathering pieces that would work with the black gown when her hand fell upon the familiar box. Something about the combination struck her as perfect, the dramatic elegance of the necklace against the sophisticated simplicity of the dress. Without thinking too deeply about the implications, she had added it to the selection. Camilla noticed it immediately. The necklace seemed to call to her from among the other pieces, its central diamond catching the afternoon light and throwing tiny rainbows across the room. She knew its history, of course. Every piece in the royal collection came with stories, memories, and sometimes complicated emotional baggage. But there was something about this particular necklace that spoke to her in a way she hadn't expected. As she lifted it from its resting place, the weight of it surprised her. It was substantial, clearly made to make a statement, but there was also something deeply feminine about its design. The heart shape at the center wasn't overly sentimental. Instead, it spoke to strength, to love that endures beyond tragedy, to the continuation of life and purpose even after devastating loss. In many ways, Camilla reflected, it embodied her own journey to this moment. Her path to becoming queen consort had been far from traditional. The early years of public scrutiny, the complicated history with Charles, the gradual acceptance by both the royal family and the British public, all of it had required patience, resilience, and an understanding that some battles are won through quiet dignity rather than dramatic gestures. She had never tried to replace Diana in the public's affection, understanding that such a thing was neither possible nor appropriate. Instead, she had carved out her own role, focusing on causes she cared about and gradually earning respect through her dedicated service. Standing in the quiet of her dressing room, holding the necklace that had once graced the neck of her predecessor, Camilla felt a moment of profound connection to the woman who had worn it before. Diana's legacy was complex. She had been beloved for her humanitarian work and her ability to connect with people from all walks of life. But her marriage to Charles had been troubled, ultimately ending in divorce and tragedy. The necklace represented both the glamour of her public life and the personal struggles that lay beneath the surface. Margaret watched carefully as Camilla examined the piece. As someone who had worked with the royal family for years, she understood the unspoken protocols that governed such decisions. Jewelry wasn't just about fashion. It was about messaging, about respect for tradition, and about navigating the complex relationships within a family. She had included the necklace because it would look stunning with the chosen gown, but she also recognized that wearing it would be a bold choice, one that would not go unnoticed by the media or the public. The decision, however, wasn't really about protocol or public perception. As Camilla held the necklace, she felt something she hadn't expected, a sense of continuity, of being part of a larger story that transcended individual personalities and private conflicts. The monarchy had survived for centuries by adapting, by finding ways to honor the past while moving forward into the future. Perhaps wearing this piece could be part of that evolution, a way of acknowledging Diana's contribution while affirming her own place in the royal narrative. Charles was in his study, reviewing his speech for the evening. As patron of several children's charities, he took these events seriously, understanding that his presence could significantly impact fundraising efforts. He had been looking forward to the gala, particularly because it would showcase some of the innovative medical research that the charity supported. His own interests in holistic health and alternative medicine aligned well with the organization's comprehensive approach to childhood wellness. The king had always been deeply committed to charitable work, even before it became fashionable for royals to have extensive patronages. His Prince's Trust had helped thousands of young people over the decades, and his environmental activism had often put him ahead of public opinion. Tonight's event would allow him to highlight causes that had been close to his heart for years, while also fulfilling his role as a senior royal supporting important social initiatives. As he practiced key phrases from his speech, Charles thought about the broader context of the evening. The charity gala represented everything he hoped the modern monarchy could be: relevant, engaged, and making a real difference in people's lives. Unlike the ceremonial aspects of royal duty, which sometimes felt disconnected from contemporary concerns, events like this allowed him to use his platform for genuine social good. His relationship with Camilla had deepened his appreciation for the collaborative nature of royal work. She brought her own perspective and passions to their shared duties, often noticing details or making connections that enhanced their effectiveness as a team. Her background, though different from the traditional royal experience, had given her insights into real-world challenges that proved invaluable in their charitable endeavors. The guest list for the evening included some of the most influential figures in British society. Business leaders who could write significant checks, celebrities who could draw media attention, and medical professionals who could speak authentically about the charity's impact. Charles knew that his role was to be both host and advocate, making everyone feel welcome while also inspiring them to be generous with their support. Back in her dressing room, Camilla had made her choice. The black gown lay across her bed, and beside it, the Spencer necklace waited in its open box. Margaret had retreated to give her privacy for the final preparations, understanding that these moments of transformation from private individual to public figure required solitude and reflection. As Camilla began the careful process of getting ready, she thought about the evening ahead. The photographers would be there in force, capturing every angle of her appearance for the next day's newspapers and magazines. Social media would buzz with commentary on her fashion choices, comparing her look to previous royal appearances and speculating about the messages behind her selections. But beyond the superficial analysis, she hoped that the focus would remain on the charity and its important work. Children's health care was one of those issues that transcended political divisions, bringing people together around shared values of protecting and nurturing the most vulnerable members of society. If her presence could help raise even a small amount of additional funding, the attention would be worthwhile. The necklace felt surprisingly comfortable as she fastened it around her neck. Its weight was reassuring rather than burdensome, and in the mirror, she could see how it completed the overall look she was trying to achieve: elegant, appropriate, and memorable for the right reasons. She adjusted it slightly, ensuring that it lay perfectly against the neckline of her gown, then stepped back to assess the full effect. The woman looking back at her from a mirror was every inch a queen consort. The years of public service had given her a natural grace in formal settings, and tonight's ensemble struck exactly the right note for the occasion. But there was something else in her reflection, a sense of confidence that came from knowing she had made choices that felt authentic to her own sense of style and purpose. Charles appeared in the doorway, resplendent in his formal evening wear. His eyes immediately went to the necklace, and, for a moment, his expression was unreadable. Camilla watched his face carefully, understanding that his reaction would tell her whether she had made a mistake in her selection. The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of shared history and unspoken understanding. Then Charles smiled, and the tension dissolved. He crossed the room and gently adjusted her necklace, the intimate gesture of a husband helping his wife prepare for an important evening. In that moment, the complicated history of the piece seemed less important than the simple fact that it looked beautiful and felt right for the occasion. As they prepared to leave for the gala, neither of them could have predicted the media storm that would follow. They were focused on the evening ahead, on their roles as representatives of the crown, supporting an important charitable cause. The choice of jewelry seemed like a minor detail in the larger context of their public duties. The car waited outside, and photographers had already gathered to capture their departure. This was routine. The documenting of royal movements had been part of their lives for so long that they barely noticed the cameras anymore. Tonight would be different, though none of them knew it yet. Tonight, a simple choice about jewelry would become a symbol of much larger questions about memory, forgiveness, and the evolution of the British royal family. The black Bentley pulled up to the red carpet entrance of the Grosvenor House Hotel, its polished surface reflecting the warm glow of the photographer's lights that had been set up hours earlier. The Children's Hospital Charity Gala was one of the most anticipated events of the London social season, and tonight's guest list read like a who's who of British society. Business moguls, entertainment celebrities, prominent politicians, and members of the aristocracy had all gathered to support a cause that touched hearts across the nation. Charles stepped out first, his movements practiced, and confident after decades of such arrivals. The photographers immediately began capturing his every gesture, their camera flashes creating a constant strobe effect that had become the soundtrack of royal public appearances. He paused at the car door, extending his hand to help Camilla emerge, a gesture that had become second nature, but never lost its significance in the eyes of royal protocol observers. As Camilla stepped onto the red carpet, the first thing that struck onlookers was her overall elegance. The black gown flowed perfectly as she moved, its sophisticated cut and subtle beadwork catching the light without being ostentatious. Her posture was regal yet approachable, the result of years of experience in navigating these high-profile events. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who understood both her role and her worth, no longer the uncertain figure who had once been overshadowed by public scrutiny. But it was when the camera flashes illuminated her necklace that the atmosphere on the red carpet subtly shifted. The Spencer diamonds caught the light and threw it back in brilliant bursts, creating a dazzling display that was impossible to ignore. The heart-shaped centerpiece seemed to pulse with its own inner fire, while the surrounding stones created a constellation of sparkle against her throat. Among the gathered photographers, several immediately recognized the significance of what they were seeing. These were professionals who had covered royal events for decades, who knew the provenance and history of every major piece in the royal jewelry collection. They had photographed this particular necklace many times before, but never on Camilla. The realization spread through their ranks like electricity, and suddenly the clicking of camera shutters intensified, everyone trying to capture the perfect shot of this unexpected moment. Sarah Mitchell, a veteran royal correspondent for one of Britain's leading newspapers, felt her pulse quicken as she spotted the necklace. She had been covering the royal family for over 20 years, and she knew immediately that this was not just a fashion choice, it was a story. Her mind raced through the implications as she watched Camilla pose gracefully for the photographers, seemingly unaware of the sensation her jewelry selection was creating. The necklace had last been photographed on Catherine, the Princess of Wales, at a state dinner just 8 months earlier. Before that, it had been one of Diana's favorite pieces, worn at several memorable events, including a charity gala remarkably similar to tonight's occasion. The visual parallels were striking. The same elegant setting, the same charitable purpose, the same dramatic jewelry making its statement against the backdrop of British high society. Inside the hotel, the ballroom had been transformed into a glittering wonderland. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables adorned with white roses and gold accents, while silk draping in the charity's signature colors created an atmosphere of refined luxury. The organizers had spared no expense in creating an environment worthy of the distinguished guest list, understanding that the setting itself would play a role in encouraging generous donations throughout the evening. Lord Pemberton, the charity's chairman, had been greeting guests near the entrance when word reached him about the royal arrival. As a longtime friend of the family, and someone who had worked with both Diana and Charles on various charitable initiatives over the years, he understood the delicate dynamics that could surround such events. His immediate concern was ensuring that the focus remained on the charity's mission rather than on any unintended controversies. The receiving line moved efficiently as Charles and Camilla made their way through the gathered dignitaries. Each interaction was brief, but meaningful, with both royals demonstrating the practice skill that made them effective ambassadors for charitable causes. Charles spoke knowledgeably about the charity's recent achievements and future goals, while Camilla connected personally with donors and volunteers, remembering names and details from previous encounters. Dr. Elizabeth Hammond, the hospital's chief of pediatric surgery, had been looking forward to this moment for weeks. As someone who saw firsthand the impact of the charity's funding on young patients' lives, she understood the vital importance of events like this in securing the resources necessary for cutting-edge medical care. When she was introduced to the royal couple, her focus was entirely on sharing stories of recent breakthroughs and thanking them for their continued support. But even Dr. Hammond, absorbed as she was in discussing medical advances, couldn't help but notice the extraordinary necklace Camilla wore. The diamonds seemed to capture and amplify every light source in the room, creating a display that was both beautiful and impossible to ignore. As someone who appreciated precision and excellence in her professional life, she found herself admiring the craftsmanship that had created such a remarkable piece. The cocktail hour provided an opportunity for more relaxed interactions, and Camilla found herself in conversation with several young doctors and nurses who had benefited from the charity's educational programs. These were the people who made the organization's mission tangible. Dedicated professionals whose work was directly enhanced by the funding raised at events like tonight's gala. Their enthusiasm for their work was infectious, and Camilla felt genuinely energized by their passion and commitment. Meanwhile, Charles was engaged in discussions with potential major donors, including several business leaders who had the capacity to make transformational gifts to the charity. These conversations required a delicate balance of royal dignity and fundraising advocacy, and Charles navigated them with the skill of someone who had spent decades supporting charitable causes. His genuine interest in the organization's work came through clearly, making it easy for donors to connect their financial support with meaningful outcomes. Among the guests, reactions to Camilla's jewelry choice varied significantly. Many attendees were focused on the evening's charitable purpose and barely noticed the historical significance of her necklace selection. They saw an elegantly dressed queen consort supporting an important cause, exactly what they expected from such an event. For them, the success of the evening would be measured in funds raised and connections made, not in fashion statements or symbolic gestures. However, others in attendance were more attuned to the nuances of royal protocol and jewelry history. Lady Margaret Thornberry, a longtime friend of both the Spencer and Windsor families, recognized the necklace immediately and understood the complexity of emotions it might evoke. As someone who had known Diana personally and had watched the royal family navigate the aftermath of her death, she found herself both impressed by Camilla's confidence in wearing the piece and curious about the reaction it might generate. The photographers outside continued their work, but word of Camilla's jewelry choice was already beginning to spread through social media channels. Royal fashion bloggers and jewelry enthusiasts who followed such events closely were quick to identify the Spencer necklace and speculate about the significance of its appearance tonight. Comments and theories began proliferating across various platforms, with some praising the choice as a gracious tribute to Diana's memory, while others questioned the appropriateness of the decision. Inside the ballroom, dinner service began with all the pageantry expected at such a prestigious event. The menu had been carefully planned to reflect both seasonal ingredients and the international scope of the charity's work, with each course representing a different region where the organization provided support. The wine selection had been donated by several prominent vineyards, ensuring that every aspect of the evening contributed to the fundraising effort. As the evening progressed, the formal program began with remarks from Dr. Hammond about the charity's recent achievements. She spoke eloquently about new research initiatives that were showing promising results in treating childhood cancers and about innovative surgical techniques that had been developed with the charity's support. Her presentation included a brief video featuring young patients and their families, a powerful reminder of why everyone had gathered tonight. The emotional impact of the medical stories provided a perfect counterpoint to the glamorous setting. As guests watched footage of children recovering from complex surgeries and heard testimonials from grateful parents, the luxury surrounding them felt not indulgent, but purposeful, a celebration of the resources that made healing possible. The contrast between the ballroom's elegance and the hospital rooms shown in the video served to emphasize how their support could transform lives. When Charles rose to deliver his keynote address, the room fell into respectful silence. His speech had been carefully crafted to balance recognition of the charity's accomplishments with a call to action for increased support. He spoke personally about his own experiences visiting the hospital and meeting young patients whose courage in the face of serious illness had moved him deeply. His words carried the weight of genuine conviction, making it clear that this was not merely a ceremonial appearance, but a heartfelt endorsement of the organization's mission. Throughout the formal program, Camilla's necklace continued to catch the light as she moved, creating subtle but noticeable sparkles that drew attention even in the dimmed ballroom lighting. The dramatic nature of the piece meant that it remained a focal point of her overall appearance, commanding attention in a way that complemented rather than competed with the evening's serious purpose. The auction portion of the evening proved particularly successful, with spirited bidding on items ranging from luxury vacation packages to private dining experiences with celebrity chefs. Charles and Camilla participated enthusiastically, with the king successfully bidding on a week-long stay at a Scottish castle that would be donated back to the charity for future fundraising use. Their engagement with the auction process encouraged others to bid generously, creating an atmosphere of friendly competition that drove prices well above expected levels. As the evening drew toward its conclusion, the final tallies exceeded all expectations. The combination of ticket sales, auction proceeds, and direct donations had generated nearly twice the amount raised at the previous year's event. The success was attributed to several factors: the strong economy, the compelling medical programs being funded, the prestigious venue, and the active participation of the royal guests. But even as organizers celebrated the financial success of the evening, a parallel story was developing outside the ballroom walls. News outlets were beginning to pick up on the photographs from the red carpet, and royal correspondents were preparing stories that would analyze every aspect of Camilla's appearance. The Spencer necklace had become the unexpected star of the evening, generating discussion that would soon overshadow even the charity's remarkable fundraising achievement. As Charles and Camilla prepared to depart, they were surrounded by grateful organizers and donors who thanked them for their participation and support. The couple seemed genuinely pleased with the evening's success, understanding that their presence had helped create an event that would have lasting impact on children's health care. From their perspective, the evening had accomplished exactly what they had hoped, raising significant funds for a worthy cause while strengthening relationships with key supporters. The ride back to Clarence House was quiet, both royals reflecting on the conversations they had enjoyed and the people they had met. The necklace that had unknowingly created such a stir sat securely around Camilla's neck, its diamonds still catching the occasional streetlight as their car moved through London's late-night traffic. Neither of them yet realized that this simple piece of jewelry had become the center of a media storm that would dominate royal coverage for days to come. As they arrived home, Charles helped Camilla from the car with the same considerate gesture he had made hours earlier on the red carpet. The evening had been a success by every measure that mattered to them. The charity had exceeded its fundraising goals, important relationships had been strengthened, and they had effectively fulfilled their roles as senior royals supporting a worthy cause. The choice of jewelry that would soon capture headlines seemed like a minor detail compared to these substantial accomplishments. Dawn broke over London with the kind of crisp clarity that often follows a successful evening, but inside the newsrooms across the city, editors and journalists were already deep into what would become one of the most intensely discussed royal fashion moments of the year. The photographs from the previous night's charity gala had been processed, analyzed, and were now being prepared for front-page treatment that would surprise even the most seasoned royal watchers. At the offices of the Daily Telegraph, royal correspondent Victoria Sterling arrived to find her editor practically vibrating with excitement. The images from the gala had been circulating among the staff since the early morning hours, and the significance of Camilla's jewelry choice had not been lost on anyone. Victoria had covered royal events for over 15 years, but she recognized immediately that this was something different, not just a fashion story, but a moment that would require careful analysis and historical context. The Spencer necklace photographs were spread across her desk in chronological order, telling a visual story that spanned decades. There was Diana at a 1985 state dinner, radiant and young, the diamonds catching the light as she smiled at something Prince Charles had whispered in her ear. Another image from 1994 showed her at a charity event remarkably similar to the previous night's gala, the same necklace creating the same dramatic effect against a black evening gown. More recent photographs featured Catherine wearing the piece, including the memorable state dinner where she had honored Diana's memory while establishing her own royal style. And now there was Camilla, photographed just hours earlier, wearing the same necklace with unmistakable confidence and grace. The visual timeline created by these images told a story about the evolution of the royal family, about how precious objects carry forward the memories and meanings invested in them by those who wore them before. Victoria's phone had been ringing constantly since she arrived at the office. Royal fashion experts, jewelry historians, and protocol specialists all wanted to share their perspectives on what they were calling an unprecedented moment in modern royal history. Some praised Camilla's choice as a gracious tribute to Diana's memory and a symbol of family healing. Others questioned whether it was appropriate for her to wear a piece so closely associated with Charles's first wife, particularly given the complicated history of their relationship. Dr. Margaret Foster, a royal historian at Oxford University who specialized in ceremonial dress and symbolic communication, provided Victoria with crucial context. She explained that royal jewelry had always served multiple functions beyond mere decoration. It was a form of nonverbal communication that conveyed messages about continuity, legitimacy, and respect for tradition. The choice to wear a particular piece could signal acceptance, defiance, tribute, or political allegiance, often all at the same time. The fact that the necklace had been prominently featured in Diana's most memorable public appearances added layers of complexity to its reappearance on Camilla. Dr. Foster pointed out that jewelry in royal circles often traveled through family lines in ways that reflected both practical inheritance patterns and symbolic messaging. The Spencer necklace's journey from Diana to Catherine to Camilla represented a fascinating case study in how objects could embody and transmit royal history across generations and relationships. Meanwhile, at Kensington Palace, Catherine was beginning her own morning routine when her private secretary brought her the early newspaper editions. The Princess of Wales had always maintained a careful balance in her relationship with Camilla, understanding that their roles within the family required mutual respect and cooperation despite the complicated history that preceded her marriage to William. She had worn the Spencer necklace on several occasions, always with an awareness of its significance and a desire to honor Diana's memory appropriately. Seeing the photographs of Camilla wearing the piece, Catherine felt a complex mix of emotions. There was no anger or resentment. She had never considered any piece of jewelry to be exclusively hers, understanding that the royal collection belonged to the institution rather than to individuals. But there was something poignant about seeing this particular necklace, which had become associated with some of her most significant public appearances, now gracing another woman's throat. William found her studying the photographs and immediately understood the delicacy of the situation. As Diana's son, he had unique insight into the emotional weight that these objects carried. But he also recognized that the royal family's ability to move forward depended partly on finding ways to honor the past without being trapped by it. His perspective on Camilla had evolved significantly over the years, from initial wariness to genuine respect for her dedication to Charles and her service to the crown. The palace communications team was already fielding calls from journalists around the world seeking official comment on the necklace story. Royal Press Secretary Amanda Phillips found herself in the challenging position of trying to address the media interest without creating additional controversy or appearing to minimize the significance of what had occurred. The standard royal response of, "We do not comment on personal styling choices," seemed inadequate given the level of public interest the photographs were generating. At Clarence House, Camilla was enjoying her morning tea when Margaret, her dresser, brought her the first newspapers. The headlines were dramatic. Camilla's stunning tribute competed with royal fashion shock and the necklace that changed everything across various publications. The photographs were prominently displayed, showing her in the Spencer necklace from multiple angles, each image capturing the extraordinary way the diamonds had caught and reflected the camera flashes. Camilla studied the images with the analytical eye of someone who had learned to see herself as others did. The necklace looked stunning, she had to admit. It complemented the black gown perfectly and created exactly the kind of elegant, memorable impression that such events required. But she was also beginning to understand the broader implications of her choice, the way it was being interpreted as a statement about her relationship with Diana's memory and her place within the royal family narrative. Charles joined her in the morning room, his own newspapers in hand. As someone who had lived through the intense media scrutiny that followed Diana's death and the subsequent years of speculation about his relationship with Camilla, he understood better than most how quickly fashion choices could become symbols loaded with meaning far beyond their original intent. But looking at the photographs, he felt primarily pride in how magnificent Camilla looked and how successfully the evening had achieved its charitable goals. The international media response was swift and varied. American outlets focused on the fairy tale aspects of the story, drawing parallels to Hollywood narratives about stepmothers and inherited jewelry. European publications took a more analytical approach, discussing the political and social implications of Camilla's choice within the context of modern monarchy. Australian and Canadian newspapers, with their own relationships to the British royal family, explored what the moment might mean for the Commonwealth realms. Social media exploded with commentary from royal watchers around the world. Fashion bloggers analyzed every aspect of Camilla's appearance, creating detailed posts about the necklace's history, its estimated value, and its significance within the broader context of royal jewelry collection. Some praised her confidence in wearing such an iconic piece, while others questioned whether it represented appropriate respect for Diana's memory. The hashtag Spencer necklace began trending within hours, with thousands of posts sharing the photographs and debating their significance. Professional royal commentators found themselves fielding questions from television producers eager to book segments analyzing the story. The combination of beautiful jewelry, complex family dynamics, and historical significance created exactly the kind of narrative that captured public imagination across demographic lines. Lady Sarah McCorquodale, Diana's sister, was approached for comment by several news organizations but declined to make any public statement. Those close to the Spencer family understood that they preferred to maintain privacy regarding Diana's personal effects, particularly when they became subjects of media speculation. The family's silence was interpreted by some as approval of Camilla's choice and by others as diplomatic neutrality in a potentially sensitive situation. At the children's hospital that had benefited for the previous night's gala, staff members found themselves fielding unexpected media attention. While they appreciated any coverage that highlighted their work, the focus on royal jewelry rather than medical breakthroughs felt somewhat misplaced to healthcare professionals whose primary concern was patient care. Dr. Elizabeth Hammond, who had spoken with both Charles and Camilla at the event, expressed hope that the royal attention would ultimately translate into continued support for their programs. The auction house specialists who regularly valued royal jewelry for insurance purposes found themselves inundated with inquiries about the Spencer necklace's worth. Conservative estimates placed its value in the hundreds of thousands of pounds, but its historical significance and royal provenance made it effectively priceless. The fact that it had been worn by 3 different members of the royal family at high-profile events only added to its already considerable mystique. As the day progressed, more nuanced analyses began to emerge from royal historians and etiquette experts who took time to consider the broader implications of the jewelry choice. Many concluded that Camilla's decision to wear the necklace actually represented a sophisticated understanding of royal protocol and family dynamics. Rather than avoiding pieces associated with Diana, she was demonstrating confidence in her own position while acknowledging the continuing importance of Diana's legacy within the family. Protocol expert Sir Geoffrey Morrison noted that the royal family had always navigated complex emotional territories through symbolic gestures, and that jewelry choices were often the most visible expressions of these internal negotiations. He suggested that Camilla's wearing of the Spencer necklace might actually represent a new level of maturity in how the family dealt with its complicated history. The evening news broadcasts across Britain led with the story, featuring fashion experts and royal commentators analyzing every aspect of the photographs. The visual impact of the necklace was undeniable. Even viewers who typically paid little attention to royal fashion found themselves drawn to the dramatic sparkle of the diamonds and the elegant way Camilla had styled them with her ensemble. Jewelry designer Philippa Morrison, who had created pieces for several members of the royal family, explained to television audiences how certain pieces seemed to choose their moments rather than being chosen. She described the Spencer necklace as having the kind of presence that could transform any outfit into a statement, and suggested that its appearance at the charity gala had created a moment of visual poetry that transcended typical fashion commentary. As evening approached, palace officials confirmed that both Charles and Camilla had been pleased with the success of the charity gala and grateful for the positive response to their participation. While they did not specifically address the jewelry coverage, sources close to the couple suggested that they were focused primarily on the substantial funds raised for children's health care rather than on fashion commentary. The story was far from over. However, international fashion magazines were already planning feature articles about the necklace's history and significance. Television documentaries about royal jewelry were being fast-tracked into production. Social media continued to buzz with analysis and speculation about what the moment meant for the royal family's evolution. What had begun as a simple choice about evening had become a cultural moment that resonated far beyond traditional royal watching circles. The Spencer necklace had transformed from a beautiful piece of jewelry into a symbol of how families, even the most public families in the world, navigate complex relationships, honor difficult memories, and find ways to move forward while acknowledging the past. As London settled into evening, the photographs from the charity gala continued to circulate around the world, each viewing adding to the layers of interpretation and meaning that would make this one of the most discussed royal fashion moments in recent memory. The diamonds that had caught the camera flashes so brilliantly were now catching the attention of millions, proving once again that in the world of royal watching, the most powerful statements often come in the most elegant packages. 3 weeks after the charity gala, the reverberations from Camilla's jewelry choice continued to ripple through both the royal family and the broader cultural landscape. What had seemed like a simple fashion decision had evolved into something far more significant, a moment that crystallized changing attitudes toward the monarchy, the complex legacy of Diana's memory, and the ways in which symbolic gestures could reshape public perception. At Buckingham Palace, senior advisors had spent considerable time analyzing the media response and public reaction to what was now being called the necklace moment. The coverage had been overwhelmingly positive, with even traditionally critical publications praising Camilla's confidence and the apparent healing it represented within the royal family. More importantly for palace strategists, polling data showed that public approval for Camilla had reached its highest level since her marriage to Charles, suggesting that the jewelry choice had resonated with the British public in ways that conventional royal engagements rarely achieved. Communications director Sir Michael Stevens found himself reconsidering long-held assumptions about royal messaging and public relations strategy. The traditional approach had always emphasized caution, avoiding any choices that might generate controversy or unwanted speculation. But the Spencer necklace incident demonstrated that calculated boldness, when executed with appropriate sensitivity, could actually strengthen rather than threaten royal standing. The key seemed to be authenticity. The public could sense when gestures were genuine rather than calculated, and Camilla's natural confidence in wearing the necklace had clearly communicated sincerity. The fashion industry had taken particular notice of the moment's impact. Jewelry sales of heart-shaped diamond pieces had increased dramatically in the weeks following the gala, with several high-end designers creating Spencer-inspired collections that captured the essence of the famous necklace without attempting to copy it exactly. The commercial influence of royal fashion choices was well established, but the emotional resonance of this particular piece had created an unusual confluence of historical significance and contemporary desirability. At Gerard, the historic jewelers who had originally created pieces for the Spencer family, archivists were fielding unprecedented requests for information about the necklace's design and craftsmanship. The publicity had generated new interest in the house's royal commissions, leading to discussions about creating a museum exhibition that would showcase the evolution of royal jewelry design over the past century. The Spencer necklace had become not just a beautiful object, but a gateway to understanding broader stories about British craftsmanship and cultural heritage. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, had watched the unfolding media coverage with a mixture of fascination and relief. Her initial complex emotions about seeing another woman wear her necklace had evolved into genuine admiration for how gracefully Camilla had handled both the moment itself and its aftermath. The experience had also given Catherine new perspective on the weight of symbolic responsibility that came with royal jewelry choices. Every piece carried stories and expectations that extended far beyond personal preference. In a private conversation with William, Catherine reflected on how the incident had actually strengthened her relationship with Camilla. The older woman's confidence in wearing the piece had somehow freed Catherine from feeling that she needed to be the sole custodian of Diana's memory within the family. Instead, it suggested a more mature approach where Diana's legacy could be honored by multiple people in different ways, each bringing their own perspective and experience to the task. William himself had been surprised by his own reaction to seeing Camilla in his mother's necklace. Rather than the discomfort he might have expected, he felt something approaching gratitude. Camilla's choice to wear the piece at such a significant charitable event seemed to honor not just Diana's memory, but her values, the commitment to using royal status for meaningful social impact that had defined so much of Diana's public work. The psychological impact of the moment extended beyond the immediate royal family to include Diana's broader circle of friends and supporters. Many who had known her personally found themselves reconsidering their attitudes toward Camilla and her role within the family. Lady Annabel Goldsmith, a longtime friend of Diana's, admitted in a rare interview that seeing Camilla wear the necklace with such grace had helped her understand how the royal family could honor Diana's memory while also moving forward constructively. Dr. Margaret Foster, the Oxford royal historian who had provided early commentary on the jewelry choice, was now working on a comprehensive academic paper about the incident's significance within the broader context of royal symbolic communication. Her preliminary research suggested that Camilla's jewelry choice represented a new model for how royal families could navigate complex emotional territories through carefully chosen public gestures. The success of the approach was already influencing how other European royal families thought about similar challenges. The international response had been equally fascinating to observe. In countries where Diana had been particularly beloved, notably Australia, Canada, and parts of the United States, the initial reaction had been more skeptical. But as the weeks passed and the context became clearer, even these audiences seemed to embrace the gesture as evidence of healing and maturity within the British royal family. The global nature of royal watching meant that local cultural attitudes toward family dynamics, forgiveness, and moving forward had all influenced how the moment was interpreted. At the children's hospital that had originally benefited from the charity gala, the long-term impact was becoming clear in concrete ways. The media attention generated by the necklace story had kept the organization in the public eye far longer than typical event coverage would have achieved. This sustained visibility had translated into ongoing donations, volunteer applications, and corporate sponsorship inquiries that would benefit young patients for years to come. Dr. Elizabeth Hammond noted with some irony that a piece of jewelry had accomplished more for their fundraising efforts than many carefully planned publicity campaigns. The publishing industry had taken notice of the public's appetite for stories about royal jewelry and its significance. Several major publishers were fast-tracking books that would explore the history and meaning of iconic royal pieces, with the Spencer necklace featuring prominently in these upcoming releases. The combination of fashion, history, and psychology that the story represented seemed to appeal to readers across multiple demographics, suggesting that the public hunger for royal content was evolving toward more sophisticated analysis. Social media analytics revealed interesting patterns in how different generations had responded to the jewelry story. Younger audiences, particularly those who had grown up after Diana's death, were more likely to focus on the fashion aspects and to praise Camilla's style choices. Older viewers, who had lived through the Diana years and the subsequent family dramas, were more attuned to the symbolic healing that the moment represented. Both groups, however, seemed to appreciate the confidence and authenticity that Camilla had displayed. The incident had also influenced how other royal families around the world thought about jewelry protocol and symbolic communication. Crown Princess Victoria of Sweden, Queen Letizia of Spain, and Princess Charlene of Monaco had all been observed making more thoughtful jewelry choices at recent events, suggesting that the British example was influencing royal-style decisions across Europe. The Spencer necklace moment had demonstrated how personal accessories could become powerful tools for family diplomacy and public messaging. For jewelry insurance companies and security services, the incident had highlighted the complex challenges of protecting pieces that carried both enormous monetary value and immense symbolic weight. The Spencer necklace's high profile meant that its security requirements had increased significantly, but its cultural importance also meant that keeping it locked away would represent a loss for the public good. Finding the right balance between protection and accessibility had become a case study for others managing similar challenges. Fashion historians were beginning to place the moment within broader trends in how public figures use style choices to communicate complex messages. Comparisons were being drawn to iconic fashion moments from political figures, entertainment celebrities, and other royal families throughout history. What distinguished the Spencer necklace incident was its apparent spontaneity. Unlike many calculated fashion statements, this seemed to represent genuine personal choice that happened to resonate far beyond its original intent. The psychological, healing aspects of the story had attracted attention from family therapy professionals and relationship counselors who specialized in blended family dynamics. While the royal family situation was obviously unique in its public nature and historical weight, the basic pattern of finding ways to honor past relationships while building new ones was remarkably universal. The Spencer necklace had become an unexpected symbol for how families could navigate complex emotional territories with grace and mutual respect. 6 months later, as Camilla prepared for another high-profile charity event, the question of jewelry selection carried new weight and possibility. The success of the Spencer necklace moment had demonstrated that thoughtful symbolic choices could achieve multiple goals simultaneously, honoring the past, affirming the present, and strengthening public support for the royal family's evolving role in modern British society. Margaret, her dresser, now approached each event with a more sophisticated understanding of how jewelry choices could communicate beyond their immediate visual impact. The Spencer necklace had taught both of them that authentic confidence, combined with respect for the history and meaning embedded in royal objects, could create moments of genuine cultural significance. Charles, too, had been changed by watching the public response to his wife's jewelry choice. He had always understood the symbolic power of royal gestures, but the Spencer necklace incident had demonstrated how personal authenticity could amplify that power exponentially. It had given him new appreciation for Camilla's instincts and judgment, qualities that he now recognized as valuable assets in their shared royal duties. The necklace itself had been returned to the royal collection, where it waited for its next significant appearance. But its brief moment in the spotlight had transformed it from a beautiful piece of historical jewelry into something approaching a cultural artifact. Future wearers would inherit not just its physical beauty and craftsmanship, but also the accumulated meaning of all the moments it had helped to create. The charity gala that had started it all was now remembered less for its fundraising success, impressive though that had been, than for the unexpected moment of family healing and public reconciliation that had emerged from a simple jewelry choice. The Children's Hospital would benefit for years from the sustained attention, but the broader impact extended far beyond any single organization or cause. As the royal family continued to evolve and adapt to changing expectations and social norms, The Spencer necklace moment had provided a template for how challenging emotional territories could be navigated with grace, confidence, and mutual respect. It suggested that the future of the monarchy might depend not on avoiding complex histories, but on finding authentic ways to honor them while moving forward constructively. The diamonds that had caught the camera flashes so brilliantly on that November evening had illuminated more than just Camilla's elegant silhouette. They had revealed possibilities for healing, growth, and renewal that extended far beyond the walls of any palace or the pages of any tabloid. In the end, the most lasting impact of the Spencer necklace moment might be its demonstration that even the most complex family dynamics could evolve toward understanding, acceptance, and genuine affection when approached with patience, wisdom, and grace. The jewelry would continue to sparkle at future events, carried forward by women who understood both its beauty and its deeper significance. But the real legacy of that November evening lay in the proof it provided that symbols of the past need not constrain the future, that with sufficient care and authenticity, they could actually help illuminate new paths forward for families, institutions, and nations ready to embrace both their history and their potential for continued growth.